Hi guys, my name is Scythe. Today we're going to be building a fidget spinner in OnShape. This project will have multiple parts. We'll be building the mainframe, the weights, the bearings, the two caps, and then we'll be bringing it all together in the assembly using mats, and then we'll be giving it the ability to spin. So let's get started. Alright, so I have made a new file here, I've renamed it fidget spinner, and let's go ahead and rename this part studio as mainframe. And so we'll just be making the mainframe in this. So let's go ahead and go over to the front view and make a new sketch. And so to create the mainframe of the fidget spinner, we're just going to be using circles and fillets and extrudes. So some basic tools. Let's go on the center point circle. The keyboard shortcut is C. And let's make this 1.5 inches in diameter. And then a second circle, 3 inches in diameter. Now that we've got that, we want to make a constructor line. Keyboard shortcut is L and then a Q. And constructor lines will not come up in like final extrusions and stuff like that. They're just to help you create the shape. And we're going to start from the origin. And we're going to make this 2.5 inches long, just like that. Then we're going to go make another circle and make this 2 inches long, just like that. And then once again, another circle, and we'll make this 3 inches long. Alright, and so hopefully you can begin to see the beginnings of a fidget spinner. But next thing we need to do is make a circular pattern. That's going to be right up here. We're going to click circular pattern, and we're just going to do the circular pattern on these entities right there. And it auto does it to 3, which is just what we need. And we're going to go ahead and hit OK for that. And our sketch is looking pretty good. Next thing we need to do to make this 3D is make an extrusion of this. So we're just going to go ahead and hit sketch 1. And instead of 1 inch, let's just make this 0.75 inches. And bam, we now have a 3D shape. But it's still a little rough. We need to make we have to make this a little better. And the way we can do that is by smoothing down some of the edges using fillets. So we're just going to come over to here, fillet. Keyboard shortcut is Shift F. And first thing we're going to be using 2 fillets, one on the edges of the rings and then one on the insides. And so we're just going to come on over to the edge of the rings, and we're going to click on the bottom and top of each and every ring. And we'll make this 0.25 inches as the radius. Hit OK on that, and then the next thing we need to do is we need to smooth down some of these edges in the inside. So we'll go to fillet again, and we're just going to come on in the inside part of this, just on that little line there, on each and every side, and this will just help smooth things out. Alright, and once we've done that, why don't we go ahead and make this 0.75 inches. And bam, this is looking pretty good for a fidget spinner frame. But the thing is, I want to change this. I want a different color. How about a nice red? So I'm just going to come over here. I already have a custom color in, so that's it right there. If you guys want to take a look at that, that's the color I'll be using. But you can go over to the mixer or go to the palette and choose any color you want. I like red, so I'm going to go ahead and stick with that. And this is looking pretty good. To make the axes go away, you can just go hit P on your keyboard. And this is looking like a pretty solid frame. And so now, the next thing is we have to make the weights that go inside of these holes. Okay, so now that we've completed the mainframe, we can now make the weights. Come over here and create a part studio. And I can just rename this as weights. Alright, now that we've done that, let's come over here to the front view again and make a new sketch on the front. And this is going to be another simple part. We're just going to make it with circles again. So one circle, a center circle, with a radius, a diameter of 1 inch, and then another one with a diameter of 2 inches. And that's it. That's all we need to do. Now we're going to come over here to extrude, just off of that face right there. And we'll make this 0.75 inches, just the same depth as the main frame. and now we're good. Once again, we'll be adding another fillet to the inside of this section. Now we're just going to come over here, fillet tool, and just on that inside face, and we'll make this 0.25 inches, and now we're good. This weight will now fit inside of our main frame. To change the color, we just come over here again, and let's make this black. Yep, that's it. Just like that, we have now made the weight. Alright, so now that we've created the weights, it's time to move on to the bearing. And I'm just going to create a new part studio. Rename it as bearing. So once again, we'll go to the front view and make a new sketch. And so we'll start off with a circle, right off from the origin, with a diameter of 0.65 inches. And then a second one of 0.75 inches. And so this will create the first kind of cylinder, and the second one will be made with a circle of 1.4 inches in diameter, and a second one of 1.5 inches in diameter. Now, there'll be an easy way and a hard way to make the balls within the bearing. We can create a half circle right up on the top and create a circular pattern within the drawing, within the sketch, and then revolute all of those. But that's going to be 8 different revolutes. So instead we can just make a circular pattern of the part. And that's the way I'm going to be showing you. So we're going to create a line from the top of this circle all the way over here to the top of the upper circle. And then we're going to create a circle from the midpoint. So we can just hover over the line, and OnShape will show us the midpoint of that line. And we're just going to go all the way out, and it should be 0.325. And that looks good. I'm just going to go back. Then we're going to trim off the second part of the circle because we want to make a sphere, and so we only need a cross section of half of that sphere to revolute. And so this looks pretty good. I'm going to hit OK on the sketch, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to extrude both of these faces just to create those 2 rings. But instead of a blind, what we want is when we make the spheres, we want them right in the center. And what we're going to do right here is that when we extrude them, they're going to be coming out all the way. So the spheres will be at the bottom. To change that, we can just make, instead of a blind, we can make it this asymmetric extrude. And so that means it's going to be the face that we're going to be extruding from is going to be right in the center. And that's exactly what we want. We're going to hit OK on that, and that means we're ready to go. Let's go ahead and view the sketch again so we see that half circle. And we're going to revolute. We're going to click on the revolute tool. We're going to click on that face, and for the revolve axis, we're just going to click on that line right there that we created before. And now we have the sphere between these 2 cylindrical shapes. We can now hide that sketch. We no longer need it. And now instead of making the circular pattern within the sketch, we can now make it a circular pattern on the part. So I'm going to come up over here where it shows circular pattern. Sometimes it might be hidden where it shows linear pattern. To change it, we can just click on circular pattern from the arrow tool. We're going to click on the sphere, and then for the axis of pattern, we're just going to click on the upper bound of that sphere. For the axis of pattern, we're just going to click on the upper bound of that cylinder, and instance count, we want 8 different spheres right there, and so that's just going to create 8 different spheres just along that. And now we have created our bearing just like that. If you want to change the colors, you can just come over here to the color panel. I want this circle to inside to be gray, and the outside, the balls, if we change the first instance of these spheres, we can change the color of all of them. And just like that, we have now created a nice little bearing. So right now we finished the bearing, but before we can move on, we have to do one more thing. As you can see in the parts list, we have 10 different parts going on. And so if we drag this part into the assembly to move it around and make it part of the whole fidget spinner, these different parts can actually move around, which is not what we want. We want these parts to be one whole, and we can make it one entire whole by using a composite part. And so if we just highlight everything within bearing, we just make one composite part, and we can treat this as a whole. And so if we drag in this composite part into the assembly, nothing will be able to move, and everything is just the way we want it. So now that we've got that composite part out of the way, we can move on to making the caps. So I'm just going to make a new part studio, and I will rename this to cap number 1. I'm going to come on over here to the front plane and create a new sketch. And we'll start off once again with a center point circle with a diameter of 0.65. Oh, that's supposed to be 0.65 inches. Just moves this dimension inward. And then we can make a new circle with a diameter of 0.75 inches. Once that's done, we can just go hit OK on our sketch and create an extrusion on this face that is 0.75 inches long. And so that's exactly the same depth as our main frame, so everything should fit in just the way we want it to. After that, what we're going to do is create the actual part that they'll hold. So this part is going to be everything that's going to hold the bearings together, and now we have to create the actual thing that the user will hold. And we're going to create this just on the top, on the face of the previous extrude, and we're going to create another circle from the origin, this time with a diameter of 2 inches. We're going to hit OK on that, and now we have to extrude this, make it 3D. Yep, this should work. And let's also add this face and this face, so it's just one hole right there. And instead of 1 inch, let's make it 0.1 inches. And so now we have a nice little cap. Let's round off some of these edges with a fillet. So we can come over here, add the fillet tool, and let's say 0.15. That's a nice dimension. And now we have our first cap all ready to go. Let's go ahead and change the color to a nice gray. And just like that, we have finished our first cap. Why don't we go ahead and make our second one as well? And instead of remaking everything from scratch, our second cap would just fit directly into this hole right here. So instead of just making everything again, we can go ahead, right click on our cap 1, and we can duplicate it right down there. And let's rename this as cap number 2. But instead, we want these cap 1 and cap 2 to fit into each other. So now we have to create the part that goes inside of this. And that's actually just really easy. We're going to go to the back view this time. Let's get our sketch planes back by clicking P on our keyboard. And we're just going to edit sketch 1. What we're going to do is we're just going to create a line. It doesn't really matter where. Just anywhere anywhere that you like. The important part is to remain consistent, and the best way to do that is using the mirror tool. So what I put on the left side, we want it in the exact same position on the right side. So we're going to click the this line right here, the middle line, and that's going to be our line that we're going to mirror the object and the line that we just created. And so now it's going to be the same dimension, same distance from the center line. So now that we've had that, we just want to trim away the excess. So there's the different parts of the circle, and now everything should look good. Ooh, but now it looks like we have a few errors because we have to go ahead and change our extrude to better suit that. Right, let's do it off of this face and this face, and everything should get back to working again. Alright, now right here we have an error on sketch 2 because some external references are still missing because we have it off of that center point, which no longer exists. So we can just hit OK, and everything should get back to working again. And so now that we've created these caps, we can now start moving things into the assembly. Before we get into the assembly, let's just make sure everything is good. And so first, make sure that the extrude in cap number 2 is 0.75 inches, not 0.65 inches. And within the weights part studio, make sure that the fillet is on both the top and the bottom faces, just like so. so that we have the fillets on both sides. If those are all good, we can get ready to start making our fidget spinner within the assembly. The first thing I'm going to do is get our main frame. Just make sure everything is. So get our main frame and 3 weights to fit in the 3 respective holes. I'm just going to hit OK. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that all the weights go in perfectly. The best way to do that is the fasten mat. And since these weights are not going to be moving, the best thing to do is just lock them in place with the fasten mat. I'm just going to put these in top by put these in place by clicking on the top connector, just like so. And I'm going to hit the green check mark. And I'm going to do them with each of our weights. Top one right there, just like so, and just like that, we have all 3 of our weights perfectly in place. The next thing I'm going to drag in is the bearing, but remember, our bearing was a composite part, so we have to make sure we have that clicked in so we can drag in the bearing. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a revolute mate, and this will let us move it around since the bearing will be moving with the fidget spinner. So I'm just going to come over to the center of this and lock it in with the center of the spinner. And if we look at that, the balls are directly in place. And the reason why we made this a composite part is so that the different balls don't move around, just like the way we wanted it. Oh, and it actually looks like our bearing was a bit too big. Great thing is we can go back and actually change things in our part studio. Make this 0.75 inches to 1, and it will actually change within our assembly. So that's the great thing about OnShape. So now that the bearing is in place, we can move on with the caps. So I'm just going to go ahead and insert cap number 1, and this is also going to be, this is what the fidget spinner is going to be revolving around. So I'm going to create a revolute mat and just go ahead and put it in. You can see how it just fits perfectly. That's exactly what we're looking for. Now, the thing is, the caps are not actually going to be moving. So, to prevent them from moving, what we can actually do is we can fix them in place so that the fidget spinner and the bearing will move, but the caps remain where they are. Now, when the bearings move, we also want the fidget spinner to move, and when we move the fidget spinner, we want the bearings to move. And the best way to create this relationship between them is through a gear relation. And so what we're going to do is we're going to click on the both revolute mats that we have, revolute 2 and revolute 1. And these are the revolutes between the cap and the fidget spinner and the bearing and the fidget spinner. I'm going to go hit OK, and I'm going to give this a test run. If I rotate the bearing, I should rotate the fidget spinner, and if I rotate the fidget spinner, it should rotate the bearing, just like so. So that means everything is working well, and now we can go ahead and add the final cap. I always find it easier to hide the first cap. That's going to be this part right here. Hide the first cap, and it makes it easier to add the second one. So I'm going to come over here, make sure we come over here, part 1 and part 2. It seems that something is off with the part 2 because there are actually 2 parts here. And we want to make this a composite part so it doesn't run into any errors, so we're just going to hit composite part between those 2. Now I can go hit insert composite part within cap 2. So basically before, one of these prongs was actually a different part than the rest of the thing, so we just made it a composite part so we could enter it into the assembly as a whole. Now the final thing I'm going to do is add a revolute mat right between the 2 in the middle, and then come on over to the back side, put it in. Looks like something's off. Looks like we have to reorient the axis so it comes onto the back. So basically what we did was coming this way. We just want it flipped around, so we can just flip it, and now we are good. Let's get the other piece back in here. Now that we have both caps, our fidget spinner is officially complete. So why don't we give this a test run? If we spin it, our fidget spinner moves. Why don't we hide one of the caps and try spinning one of the bearings. And you'll be surprised to see that it moves as well because of that gear relation that we created. And if you don't want to actually move it with your mouse, you can also animate one of these revolute mats, and the fidget spinner will move. So congratulations, you have created a fidget spinner.